Hey, Dirty South family. This is Attorney Nassau, aka Dirty South History, coming at you to discuss some of the recent events that have happened over the last couple of days as it relates to censorship, firing people for expressing their views, and the praise of a person that is, for all intents and purposes, uh, on the fascistic spectrum. Okay, and I'm referring to Charlie Kirk and his untimely demise. Okay, and the aftermath of that. I really want to focus on the aftermath of the untimely demise of Charlie Kirk. And if you haven't already, I suggest that you take time to watch the analysis that Tad Sturmer did the other day. I think it was yesterday or the day before, regarding the Nazi playbook on basically how you take down institutions to a fascistic level without firing a shot. And yeah, I think that analysis was great. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I think it was spot on. But people of African descent, we don't need to look overseas, and with knowledge of self, don't need to look overseas to get the playbook of how these things work in our community. Okay? Because with the rise of something called McCarthyism in the middle of the last century, black people know how serious this thing can get. Okay? There's a reason that you've heard of the NAACP, but not the CRC, the Civil Rights Congress. There's a reason why, for all intents and purposes, Paul Robeson lost his mind. Okay? See, these people were radical activists for African American issues. Okay? And the reason that never heard of, most people never heard of the Civil Rights Congress is because they were far and away more radical in demanding rights for people of African descent during the Jim Crow era. Okay, you know, one of the things that they did, they advocated for real revolutionary change. And with the rise of McCarthyism, and if you don't know, Joseph McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin, and his whole raison d'etre, if you use French, the reason for being, or the reason why he was popular in the middle of the last century, was because he said that there was basically an overtaking of American society by communists, right? It was called, the other name for McCarthyism was called the Red Scare. He said that basically there are communists that have infiltrated the United States government and most United States institutions, and they are going to turn this country into a communist nation. And what that did was it allowed people to exercise their worst fears and take them out on people who were essentially powerless. And in most instances, when you start talking about the history of the United States, powerless people usually have some melanated color to their skin. Okay? Black people, brown people, Native Americans. Okay? So McCarthyism was basically a system that caused institutions to get rid of the people that they would consider communist sympathizers. If you had a civil rights organization, if you had an organization devoted to the advancement of black people and quote unquote colored people, yeah, you had to show that you were not a communist. Right? And basically what you had to do was not demand more than just integration, more than just legal fairness under the law, right? You want, if you talked about the systemic issues underlying the Jim Crow era, yeah, you automatically were assumed to be a communist, right? Because you were questioning the society, you're questioning the system, and that could not happen, because you would essentially have been labeled a communist. And with that type of thing, it allowed these Southern segregationists to purge uh, organizations of black people. He could do it legally back then, all right? And McCarthyism affected people all across the political, all across the racial spectrum, and all across the leftist political spectrum. In fact, what it did was it had neighbor turning on neighbor to whisper, hey, listen, I think this guy is engaging in communist activities. And essentially, it ruined a lot of people's lives. I mentioned Paul Robeson, who was one of the greatest activists this nation has ever produced, one of the greatest athletes this nation has ever produced, one of the greatest singers this nation has ever produced. He was essentially a American Renaissance man, but they destroyed that man. They destroyed that man. If you don't believe it, look it up. Lena Horne, she was affected by it. Lorraine Hansberry, who wrote Raisin in the Sun, she was affected by it. If you were an activist, you couldn't speak too loudly. And that was the result of these quote-unquote institutions that are designed to protect Americans that were used against Americans. And oftentimes, those Americans were Black Americans, okay? And who one of the president that is president now, who one of his mentors were? It was a guy by the name of Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn was the lawyer for McCarthy, okay? He was one of the ones who designed these programs to rat out radical activists, okay? It gets real. So once we see how this thing has happened before, you can know that it's possible that it's happening again. I mean, a comedian got basically taken off air for voicing his opinion on a current event. Professors and administrators at state schools got fired for expressing their opinions in private settings, okay? And we could go a little bit more into how free speech can be affected for a government employee in their off time or in their private conversations. If you want to, we can do that. But I just want to bring that stuff up to you. Students have been expelled from universities for speaking on this Charlie Kirk situation in a manner that some of these institutions did not like. One of them I know, I saw just recently at an institution in Texas, I want to say Texas Tech. She got arrested and then got expelled because she voiced her honest opinion on what kind of person Charlie Kirk was in the free speech area, the area designed for free speech on that campus. We're getting out of hand here. So watch Tad Sturmer's video. If you're not following him on social media, I strongly suggest that you do it. He has a great plan for exposing how resistance works. But we got to do something. This man, the president, has declared war on anti-fascists, on people who are against fascism. There is no single organization called Antifa. Antifa is short for anti-fascist. and he's declared war on anti-fascists. What does that tell you? Ponder that. Okay, I hope that you comment on this, and please share this post. I know that this post is not popular with the social media organizations, so I'm hoping that people who follow me will share this. And yeah, let's have a discussion on it. All right, Dirty South out.